Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. Micah Hollingworth on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Micah?
I'm doing as well as anybody is right now. Thanks.
Right? You're in.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I think you live in New York, but you also have a place in Connecticut. So you're in Connecticut today.
Yeah, we were really fortunate. Once it was clear, I've got two kids, 10 and 12. Once it was clear the schools were shutting down, we bugged out and have hunkered down here and are doing the remote learning experiment.
Yeah, that's fun, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you value teachers even more than you did before.
Yes. Each day's an adventure.
Isn't that right? By the way, for the listeners, we're recording this on May 7th, 2020, which I would like to think is the back end or fourth quarter of the coronavirus issue. I don't know if it is or not, but maybe we're on the backside. I hope. I don't know. But anyway, for the listeners, that's what Micah is referring to. If you happen to be listening to this podcast a year or two from now, we're in that situation, right? And we're, Micah and everybody else, we're all locked down. We're all trying to work from home, do schooling from home. Yeah. Are they getting edgy? Are they getting stir crazy? The 10 and 12-year-old? Are they like, man, Dad, when can we go somewhere?
Not so much because we've got outdoor space like that is a good counterbalance. It's just the ups and downs of any given day, either frustration because the lesson is harder to translate or because it is online instruction, or your standard technology issues that are just going to happen where something's lagging or it's not working or I can't print this, right? So each day is a series of ups and downs.
Did you go out of your office there and say, hey guys, I'm about to do a podcast interview, so please, can you not be streaming or downloading anything? Is that an issue? Because it seems like that's an issue for everybody.
It can be for us where we are, like the bandwidth is not terrific. Like I don't even, at this point in the evenings, we don't even try to do on-demand movies from the cable company because they're just not going to come through.
Is that right?
Right. Yeah, but the other services seem to be all right, and at least this time of day, they're both around their lunch break. So hopefully, knock on wood, we'll be all right.
Okay, very good. Well, you've already started to share some personal stuff. I appreciate you doing that. Married with a couple of kids in Connecticut. Why don't you tell the listeners just a little about yourself personally, where you grew up, some early family stuff, and college stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in rural Western Massachusetts, and I've always been both a theater lover and an entrepreneur at heart, right? So when I was a young kid, my first job, my mother put me to work running the farmer's market stand when I was 9, right? Because who could turn down the cute 9-year-old who's trying to sell me some strawberries for $2, right? So
nice.
I figured out the sales pitch and how to build at least a relationship with your customers early on.
Nice.
And theater was another kind of world that I found myself in early on, and at least in terms of putting on a show or producing a show, it's a lot of the similar traits, right? It's its own small mini business that you're starting from scratch that also in most cases has a pretty terrible success rate. So I learned early on the highs and lows of trying to performance shows, produce shows, all that good stuff.
So in junior high school, all that, you were drama, theater, you were in plays from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were your parents either one of them tied to that industry or that skill at all, or no?
They're both artists in their own way, and were super supportive. me
Okay.
pursuing or of the interest, but
Okay.
it wasn't a family thing in terms of being driven from other family
All right.
experiences or relationships.
I was wondering. And then, okay, so you must have loved it because when you went to the University of Mass, you majored in theater.
Yeah, I stuck with it, and that program actually prepared me pretty well for the commercial world. In that it wasn't a performing arts program where it was specifically focused on performance. It was all of it. So you had to learn
All of
all
it.
of the
Yep.
aspects. That kind of rich generalist, if you will, kind of experience where anything from dramaturgy to stage management to
Very
all
good.
the technical elements you had to learn. Um,
Great experience, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah, it set me up. I didn't appreciate as much at the time, of course, being in my 20s and wanting to do the flashy stuff, the
Right, right,
performing, right?
right, right.
But it set me up really well, especially in the early days when I moved to a city where my girlfriend, now wife at the time, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, we ran our own theater company for a while and produced our own shows.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yeah, just
Okay, okay.
very small, the classic kind of small off Broadway, 100 seats, 150 seats, but it was a tremendous experience. And from there, I just kind of fell into the commercial theater world, especially after figuring out I'm not going to be a performer. And for the first 7, 8 years of my career, I bounced around in a bunch of different kind of administrative or operations roles until falling into an opportunity at the now it's called the Lyric Theater, but at the time it was the Ford Center for the Performing Arts, a Broadway house on 42nd Street,
Okay.
where I was general manager there for 9.5 years, and then I ended up with Jujamson Theaters for 7.5 years as their VP of company operations. They own and operate 5 Broadway houses, so I got this pretty deep um, experience in
Right.
the operations of the business, from either producing a show or operating a venue, and understanding the Broadway's a pretty it's a pretty tight walled garden in terms of its business practices and who operates it. It's pretty small, so
I
being
see.
able to be on the inside, then of course it, with that entrepreneurial streak that I shared before, it leads to, well, we could try this over here, but if we adapt it this way, it would be all right for the business practices, right?
Mm,
Because
mhm, mhm.
you're not always going to introduce something that's going to revolutionize the current business model, because that business model is working great. Everybody involved in it is doing quite well. It's about small and incremental
Mhm.
improvements or opportunities that then grow into something larger, hopefully. So
Did you think to yourself, so obviously you were great at ops, you were a good leader overall, good solid GM, keep the train on time, make sure the business is
right.
running well. Plus you were tied to your passion, which was theater. So great to have that career, right? I mean, you're a great ops guy that loved theater. I mean, perfect fit. Did you think to yourself, yeah, this is cool, but I want to start my own thing? When was that just kind of always in there, or talk to us about how that transition happened? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that was always in there to a certain extent. Um, and I had a reputation for always kind of having an endless amount of new ideas or iterations of current practices that we could try, in terms of, well, what if we tried this, or what if we did that. It was as I matured and as my interest continued to expand, it I would like to say that I set on a certain path, but not on a certain outcome, if
O-
that makes sense. In terms
Okay.
of, I knew I was progressing and learning new things and widening my experience, but I wasn't doing it with the intent of, oh, now I'm going to run my own business,
I
right?
see.
It's like,
Gotcha.
oh no, the opportunity just provided itself, and it's like, yeah, this feels right, so let's try it, let's do it.
All right. Talk to us about how Broadway AI came about.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So in that role at Jujamson Company Operations, I was really largely responsible for a lot of biz dev projects. So I was meeting a lot of interesting people, pitching a lot of interesting ideas. That's where I was introduced to Satisfy Labs, who's our sister company. They're the tech provider.
I see.
And Donnie and that team came in and pitched us an idea where for in-venue operations, you could have an AI supported tool where if somebody needed something, they'd be able to engage with that AI in venue to then resolve their issue, whether that could be anything as significant as a security problem to where can I find the nearest restroom, or where can I find the nearest Heineken, right? If I'm looking for a specific item from concessions.
Okay.
For Broadway, the theater sizes are typically between 1,500 to a maximum of 2,000 seats. They're really small venues. You can see where everything's located. There's typically a staff member within shouting distance. It's certainly within visual distance in terms of being able to see somebody and go get assistance if you need it. So it wasn't as compelling an opportunity for us in that space. But with my partner John Scott, we were talking in the meeting, and we had that he had that light bulb moment where it's like, well, hold on, what if we actually started to talk about or formulate a plan about we using that technology, but to sell tickets in simplest terms, like to take that experience of walking up to a box office window and talking to the treasurer behind the window, initiate that in chat or voice, and be able to search for, reserve, and purchase tickets.
Okay.
And that kind of set us on our way in terms
Okay.
of, that's something worth digging into.
All right. Now, my immediate thought right there is, aren't there a bunch of places where you go? Aren't there a bunch of apps and websites where you can purchase tickets? Okay, go ahead. I know you're going to talk about that.
Yeah, no, there definitely are, right? I would say that I don't take this lightly, because I being on the inside with those APIs now, we see how significant the work is. But I think by and large, even the major players would acknowledge that the way in which we purchase tickets to live events today is pretty cumbersome. It's not a simple, easy process.
Okay.
While some may say that they've made improvements, or that they can offer a experience that's vastly better, it typically comes at a cost in terms of, at a minimum, downloading an app, which most consumers are not. If I'm going to see one Broadway show a year, am I really going to download an app to have that experience to purchase the tickets? It feels unlikely. Or they're a resale of tickets, and I'm now purchasing tickets, and sure, you've made the experience better, but it is now X times more expensive for me to purchase the ticket than from the primary ticketing provider. But for us, in addition to the customer experience, it's also the data that's being generated. If I'm working with a primary ticketing provider, maybe they'll provide me with a heat map, right? Somebody gets to my website.
Right.
They're looking at purchasing tickets. They're looking now at a seating chart that has every price, every possible seat available to them to purchase. I don't really understand or know what that person looked at before they made their decision to purchase their tickets. For us, from a conversational approach, I know exactly what the consumer asked for. I know exactly what seats we served up to them, and then whether or not they bought or whether they searched again. And so that data on a micro level is really valuable to the consumer that's searching the tickets. But then as you start to exponentially build that data out with the volume of conversations that you have, you can suddenly identify trends in pricing, trends in keywords or searches that generate the outcome you're looking for in terms of the ticket price that's being purchased or the number of tickets that are being bought. So the intelligence, the data that actually gets generated, we would say is even more valuable than any ticket sales that are happening.
I see. Okay. All right. And then, so as of today, then BroadwAI, it's not an app you download.
No, so we're not a third party. We're not a public facing brand. We're white label solution. We're plugged directly into the primary ticketing providers we work with. So there's no upsell or cut of the ticket sale going in our direction. Software as a service only. And we live in the shows or in our partners' channels. So that would mean the show's primary website, their Facebook via Messenger, all those other channels.
So your customer is who then? Who's your paying client?
So our paying client is either the venue operator or the event itself. In some cases, it can be both.
I got you. All right. And you're hoping that you establish a long-term relationship, right? For these long running shows where you're just like, okay, this is what you use. You use us for your customers to purchase your tickets.
Yeah, it's twofold, right? So it's the immediate client base that we have now. But then, of course, if you're plugged into the primary ticketing provider and you now have a dozen, 2 dozen clients all plugged in a region, let's say, where that information from what they want to know about the show to what's available for tickets to purchase is all easily and readily surfaceable, right? Then you become a little bit of then we're a Swiss Army knife that can plug into a variety of providers to serve up the ability to get information about the client's event out and help them facilitate ticket sales just about anywhere, right?
I
Which
see.
is, yeah.
I see. Okay. All right. Got it. All right. So, but to start this deal, so you had a partner, I think you said you had a co-founder and you're talking this through, but you had to have a sister company or a partner company because they had the tech or the developers or the software. What,
Yeah.
talk to me about the early stage there. Like, so you and your partner are like, hey, we're going to, let's be founders on this deal, but we got to give these guys some equity because they're going to be a partner and they're going to do this. Talk to me about the setup. How'd you get it started?
So in thinking through the opportunity, one, we really liked the Satisfy team and their tech.
Okay.
And then, but it was not so unique or exclusive that there wouldn't be other partners that you could work with in order to provide that
All right.
same service. But for
Okay.
us, there was an opportunity to invest in Satisfy and become a investor within that company and own a piece of it,
I
so
see.
that you have a voice at where the technology is today and where the tech stack's going to go, and presuming that you're successful in the outcome that we've described here in terms of building this tool that multiple pieces can plug in. If at some point in time there were an exit for that technology
I
provider,
see.
we'd have a say at that and we participate in that. So we kind of control our destiny rather than immediately going to one of the larger players or to another player where it was just truly a transactional relationship, but you don't own the circumstances that you've created.
Okay. I'm just going to repeat back what I heard you say. So
Yeah.
basically you and your partner invested in this other company that had the technology to build the software to do what you wanted to do with Broadway AI.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. So you have a piece of that company, plus you're the primary.
Yep.
I'm guessing you're the primary owner in Broadway AI with your
Correct.
founder. Okay, have you had to
Yep.
take on any outside cash?
Not beyond the initial raise so far. Again, knock on wood, right? In the current environment, we've been very fortunate that way.
And the initial raise was you and your co-founder and what? Maybe some friends and family, or just you and him, or you and your
It
partner?
was the two of us, and then we did strategic investment from the industry at large. So the people that were going to use the tech were the ones that we went to and pitched the ideas to get them to invest. We had
Great idea.
outside interest that may have been able to, that took a little while, right? But so we may have been able to move faster with third party or non-industry investors, but it would have been a longer curve for us in terms of for adoption. So
So that's a great.
choose your point.
This is a great tip for the listeners here. A lot of our listeners are aspiring entrepreneurs, and often they're like, "Man, how do I get the money? How do I get this thing going?"
Yeah.
So in your case, I see how you develop this. You said, "Okay, I'm not a developer. I don't know how to write code for this crap. So
Correct.
I'm gonna invest in this. I'm gonna invest in this tech company over here, and then they're gonna build the back end for me. Plus, I'll have
Mhm.
ownership." Now, I also need some other operating cash. So I'm going to go to the people that I'm actually going to sell this thing to, and I'm going to see if they want to invest early on.
Yep.
I'm guessing you probably cut all kinds of deals there. You're probably like, listen, you can use the service for the first year for free. Plus, if you're
Ah,
blah, 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 blah.
yeah. So thankfully, no.
Oh, okay.
And that way, we were very
Okay.
because of the competing interests and making sure everybody, like, it had to be a very uniform approach for all, so
Oh,
that there
okay.
was
Okay. Okay.
not a
Okay.
concern on that way. And there was no uh, during the investment conversation, there was no quid pro quo or guarantee of
Okay.
any of them
Okay.
actually using the service, right? But
All right.
it certainly didn't hurt. If they're going to invest, and that means they see the opportunity, and then once it's presented to them in terms of here it is built for you to operate, it becomes that much more likely that they're going to use that technology.
Got you. Okay, very good. Now, did you has your cap table gotten so big with so many equity holders that it's a nightmare to manage, or is it still manageable? Talk to me.
No, it's still pretty manageable. We in total we have 17 investors,
Okay.
so it's
All
it's
right.
not too bad.
All right. All right. You don't have them calling you every week saying, "Hey, man, when am I getting my money back?"
No, that was again, that was another part of our thought process we made based on what Broadway is a high risk, high reward investment uh, opportunity, right?
Okay. All
So
right.
when we
All right.
went in, we knowing what would be a typical kind of minimum investment for somebody as a courtesy for a production for a show, we made sure that we kept our stakes below that, so that for them it becomes a little bit of a no-brainer, right? It's based on my other investment strategy. This is lower than that. It's relatively low risk, and if it works out, there's a really significant potential, not just for whatever the exit may be, but more importantly, I think there's the ability for me to control messaging and ticketing for my shows directly. So I am interested in learning more about that or utilizing it that way.
Do you have a target for your exit? Like, are you already thinking, okay, this is who's going to buy us someday?
Now, similar to the other, like that all sounds great. Whenever it comes up, I'm like, yeah, that's all funny. That's all speculative and funny money. It doesn't exist, right? It's like you
Yeah.
stay in the here and now, execute what is possible to execute, and then see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Because what I would have thought would be the world 6 months ago is completely different now. So who
You,
knows?
it's so interesting. Anytime somebody asks me about that topic with the Riderflex, I always say something to the effect of, look, this is not Monopoly. This is not like a board game. I don't want to play fantasy like this. I'm just focused on real life right now.
That's right. That's right. Funny money. No, not interested in speculating. Yeah.
You've had it going for what, 2 years?
Yeah, just 2 years next month. Yep.
And revenue is coming in. You have clients. Are you making money? Or can you talk about, is it still like, no, we're living off investor cash, or you're living, your revenue's coming in, you're living off your cash?
Uh, right now, no revenues coming in the door, right? So we're living on what we had been able to bank to date. This was going to be our first profitable year, which
Was
18
good.
months in was pretty good.
Right.
We
Yeah.
teed up well. Uh, with
Revenue. But you were headed towards revenue and cash flow positive 2020 before the coronavirus is what I'm hearing.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. All
So
right. All right.
with where our clients are at, billing is suspended. We're still providing this service and supporting them because there's a lot of stuff coming in, and we're doing the work with our sister company with Satisfy to build in the additional tools and channels so that when you get to the other side of this, it's there's this many more options. There's this many more opportunities for you utilizing the tech.
You know, there's a silver lining, right? Your tech guys are having time to do a bunch of stuff that maybe
Yep.
they wouldn't have had time to do, right? Like
Yes.
so there's a
Yeah, it
positive.
takes effort because everybody's remote, right? To keep the team focused and to keep people working on singular goal or singular focus. But
Mhm.
yes, there is an opportunity here if you can do it.
Did you file for your PPP loan, and did you do any like EIDL, like emergency disaster loan stuff? What'd you do there with? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we did file for the PPP and that came through. We
Great.
did file for the emergency disaster loan
Awesome.
and we got our counter ticket number, if you will, right? The deli counter number, but I had no expectation of if or when we would hear from them. So
Okay, well, just so you know, so your PPP came in, right? I think the PPPs hit pretty quick. I'm starting to get word from lots of CEOs that I know that the disaster loans are starting to hit. They're starting to hit the bank. So
all right.
if you got
Well,
if you got your little confirmation number, it's you're
I know that's talking to others. I know that's all important and golden. So I'm like, all right, great. We do have a number. I have no idea where we are in line, but we have a number.
Now here's the interesting. Speaking of silver linings, right? There are going to be some entrepreneurs out there and some small business owners that were sitting around thinking, sure would be nice to have a big line of credit. Sure would be nice to have an investor give us another X amount of money. Don't even have time to mess with that right now. Okay, boom, coronavirus hits. All of a sudden, the SBA says, "No, you can file for a disaster loan, and you can get some disaster money at a super low interest rate for 30 years." Bam! All of a sudden, the small business owner's like, "Okay, yeah, I'll sign up for that," and
Yeah,
they got what they were thinking they needed anyway. So, I mean, I just the reason I'm bringing that up is because of all this stuff that's happened. I'm trying really hard to find positives and silver linings and just stay focused and positive. Right? I think that's important for business owners right now.
it sure is. It's not easy, but
It's not easy, especially when you're in your line of work, which your entire business is off of people going to venues.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, and it's already been said, we'll be of the Governor Cuomo's his kind of 4 stages. We already know we'll be in the fourth. So
Fourth
that
stage.
means I look to schools in September being the bellwether for what's going to
Okay.
happen for us in terms of returning and starting to do something. We'll see.
So it's tough to be an entrepreneur anyway, right? To be a CEO, a startup
Yeah.
founder. I mean, that by itself on a regular day is
Mhm.
super ass hard.
Yeah.
Um, Tie in what you're going through now, where your entire business is, like I said, it's venues, it's selling tickets where people are getting together. I feel for you. First of all, just let me say, I'm having an emotional reaction to the situation you're in. So it's got to be super tough. I'm sure you've had some sleepless nights lately where you're waking up at 3 a.m. and going, "Oh shit, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work."
Um, yes. But those, to be honest, though, when you're an entrepreneur, those are going to come for you anyway,
Those are
right?
coming. Yep.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do. The reminder for me, or the struggle for me, to be, if I'm being honest, right, is to
Yeah.
maintain an even keel. Don't get too high, right? When you've
Yep.
got something that's coming through that's really successful, or has been a major achievement, don't get too high
Hmm.
and don't get too low.
Yeah.
It's going to be up and down. In most cases, it's going to be up and down multiple times in the same day, and you just need to breathe and
Right.
continue to focus through and try to have clarity about what are we building, and what's the feedback I'm getting on what's been built, to make sure that I'm not building something that nobody wants, right? Like, make sure that you have a good feedback loop, and you're providing the service that people are looking for. And
Good advice.
going back to that high and low, you have to take all that commentary in, and be able to kind of constructively sit down and sort through it and find the things that are going to be useful and productive for you to execute on.
Good advice. Now, I think I heard you say earlier you're not taking a salary or you weren't paying yourself. Did I pick up on that? Did I miss that earlier?
No, I am at the time. I am right now, thankfully, and thanks to PPP, that's
Right.
able to continue, right? But that, for how long, we'll see.
Right. I'm guessing you're not making as much money as you were when you were a GM working for other people running theaters.
Maybe that would be correct, and it was, and certainly it was a little bit more secure.
A little bit
We'll
more
say.
secure. Do you ever have those moments? Do you ever have those moments where your wife is looking at you like, "Hey, Micah, I kind of liked it better when you were a GM for the."
So that's another thing I would suggest. Like, if you're really going to go down this path, if you can, really make sure you have a really strong partner, not a work partner, but a life partner. Right? My wife is. We've been together forever, and she is an integral part of my kind of critical thinking. And honestly, it was knowing that in our circumstance with the kids, right,
Yeah.
you're really making a choice that's larger than you. You're impacting the entire family. Everybody's at risk. So it was a little over a year of conversations and planning and pressure testing, with her looking at and providing feedback and talking through, so that when it came time to actually make the jump, to pull that
Mhm.
trigger, um, w- it was the right decision. And even with the highs and lows since then, there's no question that it was the right choice to make given my circumstances. Whether that means that this is going to become X, Y, or Z, again, I couldn't tell you, right? But you're on this path and you see what life presents and what the outcomes may be, because they change on a daily basis.
They do change on a daily basis. Really good advice there for the listeners. You make sure you spend time planning it out, looking at the scenario, making sure your spouse or your partner is on board. You're looking at your cash situation. You're talking about, what's going to happen, and you're holding hands together. Just really spend some time on all that before you walk into your boss at your regular job and say, I quit.
Yeah. Really think that through.
For sure. If you, is there speaking of entrepreneurial advice, which we were just talking about, anything else that jumps out at you that you would say to a listener of this episode that's thinking about starting their own thing and quitting their job? Anything else you want to share with them?
Uh, sure. I assume that anybody in that position will have trusted friends or coworkers or colleagues who would have some familiarity with the opportunity or the idea that they've got fermenting in their head, right? So similar to what sharing or making the plan with your spouse, talking with people from that world that you're thinking of applying that idea to get their feedback, to see, am I on the right track? Is there enough there? What are the pitfalls that they immediately raise that I haven't thought of, or that I have and I can address this way? Doing that constant pressure testing and kind of idea iteration out, so that you're fully flesh out what you're doing is really important.
That's good stuff. Let me ask you a couple of questions here as we head towards a wrap up. If you could call your 21-year-old self coming out of school, what would you tell Micah?
Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to self-edit a little bit. From a business side, I would say be more, be patient. It is going to take time, and that it only happens one relationship at a time, and
That's
and
good.
the value of those relationships are important, often in ways that you don't anticipate.
That's good stuff. One relationship at a time. I like that. Speaking of relationships, I'm guessing you've met some pretty famous people in your life so far.
I have. I've gotten a little jaded about
Jaded?
it.
Yeah, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet.
But
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess you've met some really nice people and some assholes.
Just like any other walk of life, people sometimes are exactly who you expect, and then sometimes they completely surprise you.
Favorite. I got to ask you this because you've been in the life, right? So your favorite. I don't know, movie of all time. If you had to give me one.
Oh, favorite movie. Hmm. I haven't thought about that in a while. Um,
Or maybe a couple, and then can you tie that into favorite actor or actress of all time? Because since you've
oh
been in
man.
the
So
life.
uh, I've been watching. Unfortunately, my brain is stuck in all the bad late '80s and early '90s movies that we've been watching with our kids. Right? It's like, now's the time. Okay, here we go. Like,
Let's do it.
so
Yeah.
top of mind is, Matthew Broderick and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. We just got to see that one with the kids most
Is that right?
it's like, all right, I remember this, and that, you're just reopening it now for the 10 and 12-year-olds. So I'll go with what's top of mind at the moment with my scattered head.
My wife, we were watching a movie the other night called Blinded by the Light. It's a take on this kid who grew up in the '80s and became a Springsteen fan,
Oh,
and and uh, and I was always a Springsteen fan anyway. So my wife was like, "Hey, I think you might like this movie." We watched it, and it's got all the '80s stuff in there and everything, and and I'm like, "Oh," I was feeling young as I was watching it.
Sure. So I can do a good tie-in for you there then, because I was
Okay.
with Stu Jampson when they had Bruce's Broadway show. So I
Really?
performed it to Walter Kerr. Yeah,
Did
and
you get?
he is exactly what you would think he is. He's just a genuine, beautiful man,
Is
and
he? That's awesome.
he really
That's awesome.
he deeply, deeply cares about his craft. So seeing him prepare and do that show on a nightly basis was a master class of how you should treat yourself as an artist. It was impressive.
Pretty cool. That's cool. I appreciate you sharing that. One more question. If you had to put your core purpose in life into a sentence, and I pushed you to not tie that to your wife and children, because
Yep.
I'm guessing that'd be automatic.
Yeah.
How would you define Micah's core purpose?
Uh, Making connections to try to make the world a little better.
Make Now see, oh, I like that. Nobody's answered that way before. So all right. So you've really highlighted for the listeners how important relationships and networking and connections are to success and making the world a better place. It is so important. You're right. When I was younger, God, I was so cocky and kind of an asshole and thought I knew everything and thought if I just worked hard, that's all that mattered. I just want to encourage, especially anybody listening to this episode coming out of college or early 20s, these relationships that you have a chance to make early on, they are so valuable. It's
Yep.
just so critical to foster these relationships as you move along. And you've touched on that a few times here. And I'm guessing many of those relationships that you managed early helped you open doors to get this thing started.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address
Micah, I really appreciate
riderflex.com
being on the
or
Riderflex podcast
888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.